Hi, this is Mike. Today I wanted to play a video from Alex Newman recorded by Liberty and Finance last week. Alex Newman has been attending private meetings held by the globalists for years. In this interview, he talks about some recent information that he has uncovered regarding climate change and the attack on farming being used to take over control of the farmland in our country as well as in other countries. According to Newman, this action against farmers is part of the plan to change the eating habits of the masses. Listen to Alex Newman as he discusses some of his concerns and what it means to us.
Executive Director of Public School Exit, but again, the hub for all of it is libertysentinel.org, and I'm Senior Editor at The New American, which people can find at thenewamerican.com. So this has been a long-term process that the UN has been engaged in, and so they just every year they have their UN General Assembly meeting where presidents, dictators, terrorists, spies, kleptocrats, they all come together for their once-a-year rah-rah moment. And this year, the real big theme, the big push, aside from the health one, they passed a pandemic declaration demanding all kinds of crazy things. But the real focus of this year's summit was the Sustainable Development Goals. We're at the halfway point now. They deliberately turned this into a word salad, so it becomes very complex for normal people to follow. But the Sustainable Development Goals, also known as UN Agenda 2030, are 17 separate goals that were adopted in 2015 by all the governments of the world. The World Economic Forum came alongside the UN then, said they were going to be the strategic partner bringing business to the table. You've now got the religions of the world coming on board. They just met a few years ago in Germany. All these religious leaders, they purport to represent 7 billion people. They signed this declaration that all of our religions believe we should organize human affairs in accordance with the Sustainable Development Goals and Agenda 2030. So it's a big, big deal. And the intersection with food security, our agriculture systems is very, very direct and very obvious. As you read the Sustainable Development Goals, there's at least 5 or 6 that deal directly with food. And as you take the UN's agenda as a whole, what you realize here is this is actually what the UN itself called the Master Plan for Humanity. Those are the words from the head of the UN General Assembly when they were adopted in 2015. The Communist Party of China came out right after they were approved by every government, and they said they played a crucial role in developing this. Some of it is, we need global wealth redistribution, is what they say in goal number 10. We need to indoctrinate your children, is what they say in goal number 4. But then they've got a whole bunch of them that deal directly with agriculture, both with ranching, with farming, also with fishing. And they're making the case essentially that current agriculture is not sustainable. We need to radically reshape the food supply. They make reference to a lot of old UN agreements, like one of the earliest meetings that they had on sustainability. They came out with a declaration. This was in Vancouver. It was called the Habitat 1 Declaration. And they actually said in very clear language, and I'm quoting here from the text, land cannot be treated as an ordinary asset controlled by individuals. They said private land ownership is a principal instrument of accumulation and concentration of wealth. Therefore, it contributes to social injustice. And so public control of land use, and again, I'm quoting directly from their Vancouver Declaration, is indispensable. Right? So they're coming for our landowners, they're coming for our ranchers, they're coming for our farmers very deliberately, very strategically. And as you go down the list of sustainable development goals, what you'll see is the overall agenda is to move, especially small and medium-sized ranchers and farmers, off the land and to get these really collectivized in these giant fascist public-private partnerships where you have mega corporations teamed up with the government to completely control the food supply. So that's the direction they're headed in. And then you mentioned one other thing, which is they're trying to medicalize our food supply. Now, the World Health Organization has a plan they call One Health, and they say that all health is interrelated. We have to stop looking at human health as if it were its own thing. Animal health, right? In fact, most of the experts on these committees are actually veterinarians. So animal health, planetary health, the environment, all this gets rolled up into this One Health system. And then you enter into this very bizarre system where they want to start producing crops that are genetically engineered that will act as vaccinations for people. And they say this openly. They want lettuce that will serve to vaccinate you. They want to inject cows and pigs with mRNA injections that supposedly will keep the animals and you safe. So this is, I think, very, very significant. You're not hearing this from most of the press. And yet what we're talking about here are profound changes, not just in our food systems, but in every area of life. And there is a war on our food supply, on our traditional food supply. And I first noticed this over a decade ago. I used to live in South Africa. I have a very strong interest in what's happening there. And when I saw the president at that time, Jacob Zuma, openly publicly singing in front of 50,000 troops, a stadium filled with military people that bring me my machine gun, we're going to shoot all the farmers. I'm like, what? Like, did I hear that correctly? So I had to watch it a few times. Shoot all the farmers? I mean, what could you do that's more idiotic than shooting the people who produce your food, right? And it's an old struggle song, don't take it literally. But of course, they are very seriously advocating this. So some of the farm murders that we've seen in South Africa are barbaric beyond anything you can imagine. And then I saw similar things happening in Brazil. I used to live in Brazil, so I've got a strong interest in what happens in Brazil. I've got a strong network of contacts and sources, and I saw the government, under the leadership of Dilma Rousseff, a former communist terrorist who actually helped kidnap the U.S. ambassador back in the 1960s, clearing whole villages off of the map. I mean, they were literally ordering these villagers at gunpoint. They sent in troops, some of them wearing UN costumes, to hold these villagers at gunpoint and have them dismantle their little shacks, right, and dismantle their farms. What in the world? Hundreds of thousands of hectares of some of the most productive and fertile agricultural land in the world. Whole villages being wiped off the map. And the official excuse from the government was, we're going to give that land back to Indians who lived there, before the Portuguese arrived, 600 years ago. Oh, okay, that's interesting. So somebody gave me the contact information for the Xavante Indians who were supposedly going to be receiving this land. And I call them up and say, hey guys, the FUNAI, the government agency that deals with Indians, says you guys are going to get all this land back. I say, that's just a lie. That's not our land. That never has been our land. They said we're Indians of the Floresta, not the Cerrado. So we're Indians of the jungle, not the kind of the savanna area, the grasslands where all these farms were. So he said, that's a lie. The government's just making that up. They're not giving us that land. That's not our land. We don't want that land. That was interesting. So you got South Africa, you got Brazil. Of course, we all knew what was happening in America. They're terrorizing the Bundy family. There have been 50 plus cattle ranches in that region of Nevada. The last one standing was Bundy. And of course, we saw what they tried to do to them, right? There's a desert gopher, tortoise, or whatever, that you got to pay more fees. They literally were evicting all of these ranchers from their land. And this is happening all over the country. There's a spotted owl on your farm. There's a pond. You can't do that. The EPA, whatever agency, will come in and shut down your farm, bankrupt your farmers. So this was happening in America. Then in China, 2013, the government put out an order saying all these little farmers, all these little peasant farmers whose families have been on the land for centuries, you got to go. Right? We built apartments for you in the cities. The government's going to, in China, they didn't even need an excuse. They just said, get off the land or we'll kill you. Right? And don't worry, we built you a nice little apartment. So hundreds of millions of farmers being evicted off their land in China. So all over the world, this is happening. Then more recently, we saw what was happening in Holland under the guise of nitrogen. We're going to shut down, between a third and a half of all the production in the Netherlands. The Netherlands is the second largest exporter of agricultural goods by value in the world after the United States. So we've got a war on farmers in America, a war on farmers in the Netherlands, a war on farmers in South Africa, a war on farmers in Brazil. These are the most productive agricultural producing nations in the world, and all of them, the government is waging war on the farmers. And we saw Sri Lanka. They implemented these stupid UN ideas. What happened? The whole agricultural system collapsed. They went from exporting food and being self-sufficient to now being desperately in need of food, medicine, fuel, etc. So all over the world, this is happening, Dunnigan, and it's not an accident. This is being coordinated at the highest levels. And if you look, the Rockefeller Foundation, the very, very powerful institutions behind the scenes, the UN, the World Economic Forum, they're telling you what they're doing. They want to totally reshape the food system. And they say it's in the interest of sustainability. They say it's in the interest of nutrition. Nothing could be further from the truth. Not eating is not sustainable. And then just in the last few months, we've seen John Kerry, the Biden administration's climate czar, running around the world whining about how, I forget the exact number, I think 33% of all the emissions are coming from agriculture. Yeah, and as Roman said, who just did this great new documentary at the Epic Times, No Farmers, No Food, 100% of our food comes from our agriculture. So this is a very problematic ideology. These are people who openly say they believe there's too many people on the planet. They do not have your best interests at heart. And if they get their way, you will be eating bugs. Right? And that sounds ridiculous, but back in 2013, over a decade ago, I got a report from the UN Food and Agriculture Organization, and the guy who sent it to me, he was a UN insider. He said, Alex, this is important. You need to be paying attention to this. So I read the report, and they actually say, hey, we've got to convince those Western people to eat bugs. Bugs are more sustainable than meat, than chicken, than fish. We need these people to eat bugs. How are we going to do it? Because they don't want to eat bugs. Well, they actually outline the process there. We're going to brainwash their kids in the public school system to believe that eating bugs is healthy, nutritious, and good for the planet. We're going to bombard these people with propaganda through the government broadcasters like the BBC, like NPR, like Corporation for Public Broadcasting. That's exactly what we're seeing now. And as we speak, Dunnigan, they are building the largest insect protein processing facility in the world outside of Decatur, Illinois. So this is coming at us like a freight train. The food crisis has already hit multiple countries around the world. It's going to get worse. Obviously, destroying agriculture in a country like the United States that is so unbelievably productive when it comes to food production is difficult. It takes time, but they're working overtime to try to do that under various pretexts, protecting species, protecting water, protecting the climate from emissions. So all these different excuses, but it's all excuses. It's about taking over the food supply and ultimately controlling the population. Yeah, and there's so much to say on this front. I would start with, the individual to the largest extent possible. Try to wean yourself off the big corporatized food systems, if you will. Stop doing your shopping at Walmart. Stop doing your shopping at these mega grocery store chains, and get to know your local farmers. Go to your local farmer markets. We here where I live, we buy most of our meat, most of our produce, and most of our milk, our dairy, our yogurt, our butter, our cheese. We're getting this from local farmers who live right here in our county, who are friends of ours, who we know they treat their animals well. We know they're not injecting them with weird stuff. So we know our farmers. And yeah, we pay a little bit more than we would at the local grocery store for the nasty, corporatized, mechanized fake food. But we know our farmers. We're supporting our local community. We know our food is healthy and good for us. We know it's natural. So I would highly encourage people to do that. Depending on where you live in the country, there is almost certainly a local farmers market. Go there, get to know your local producers. Of course, the federal government tries to put up as many obstacles to this as they can. We've now seen them unbelievable SWAT raids on Amish farmers who are, trying to sell milk to their neighbor. I mean, this kind of stuff is beyond 1984. It's absolutely outrageous and grotesque. Thankfully, there are some efforts in Congress right now to defund these war on farmer initiatives. So I think those things are important. Get to know your local farmers, support your local producers, and make sure you're getting local, healthy food. At the state level, I think there's a lot we can and must do as well. And you mentioned also growing your own food. I have some of my own cattle. I have some of my own fruit orchard. I got a nice fruit orchard close to here. We've turned even our residential property where we live full time covered with food producing trees, plants, etc. We threw sweet potatoes out back. We got sweet potatoes growing all over the place. A lot of our neighbors have chickens. Ours got eaten by a possum, so we don't have chickens right now. But it's great to, and especially if you have kids, it's a great thing for kids to be able to work with producing food, learn these things, have useful chores to do. So, at the local level, at the household level, you can definitely do a lot. At the state level, we need to have our state policymakers standing in the gap and saying to the federal government, no, you're not going to come here and terrorize our farmers. You're not going to do SWAT raids on our Amish communities because they're selling milk to each other. In fact, if you try to do that, we have multiple state and federal statutes that you're in violation of, and we're going to be holding you accountable. I mean, you cannot run around here like some kind of Gestapo terrorizing innocent people and infringing on the rights of our citizens. So sheriff's departments and state law enforcement need to really be taking a more active role and saying, no, you are not going to come into our county. You are not going to come into our state and terrorize these innocent people who are just trying to produce food for their families and their communities. That's got to stop. And if you do that, we're going to treat you like the criminal that you are. You're going to be arrested. You're going to go spend some time in county jail while we put together a jury and prosecute you to the fullest extent of the law. Just because you got a fancy costume doesn't mean you're immune to our laws, doesn't mean you can trample on the rights of our citizens. In fact, every one of you took an oath, usually on a Bible, to uphold and defend the Constitution. This stuff is flatly unconstitutional and it needs to stop. We also need our states to start passing laws to protect us. Florida has been a pioneer in this regard. We saw it during the last few years of craziness, right? OSHA came out with a mandate. They said, a $7,000 fine if any employee of a company that with more than 100 people wouldn't take the thing. Well, our state here in Florida, we passed a law that said any company that fires a worker for not having the thing that they were supposed to have, they're going to pay a fine 10 times that size to our state government. And guess what? People in this state did not get fired for refusing to participate in this madness. We need states to start doing stuff like that. I just interviewed pretty recently a state representative who's got a bill in South Carolina to nullify the World Health Organization. And he says no directive, policy, law, statute, regulation coming out of the World Health Organization will be enforced in this state. No state or local government employee or resource will be used to facilitate the enforcement of any of these things. And so states can do a lot to protect their people. You will not be shutting down our farms in this state. You will not be shutting down our power plants. We've got to have our states interposing. This is exactly what Thomas Jefferson and James Madison said was the rightful remedy to an out-of-control federal government. Those are their terms, right? In the Virginia and the Kentucky resolutions, they said the rightful remedy to unconstitutional usurpations of power by the federal government was for the state government to interpose and refuse to cooperate, refuse to participate in this lawlessness. We must do that again. And the Supreme Court has consistently upheld this. I mean, even back in the mid-1800s, they were doing this. You know, the federal government passed the Fugitive Slave Act, purporting to require that states and individuals help catch fugitive slaves and return them to their masters. Well, Wisconsin and I think a dozen of the northern states said, no, we're not going to be helping you catch people and treat them as slaves. That's ridiculous. So we need a restoration. And, you know, liberals have gotten pretty good at this, right? The federal government, they have a federal statute on the books where marijuana is completely illegal in all cases. It's a Schedule I drug. There's no excuse whatsoever under which you can smoke marijuana. And the liberal states said, okay, that's nice. We're going to be smoking marijuana here until our hearts are content. They passed legislation nullifying those federal statutes. You know, whether you want to smoke marijuana or not, that's probably not a good decision. But the point is, all of these states have openly and flagrantly defied the federal government. They decriminalized, they ended prohibition on marijuana, and even conservative states have done this now for medical marijuana. So if the liberal states can do it for marijuana, why can the conservative states not do it to protect our farmers? Why can the conservative states not do it to protect our Constitution? This is very, very simple stuff. And again, states can do a lot to protect their citizens, their farmers, their agricultural production from this growing.
Thank you for watching this video and others you can find on our website at nehemiahreset.org or on our rumble.com channel. We encourage you to learn more about the issues confronting our culture and to get involved in fighting the unchristian aspects of those who stand against our beliefs. It won't be long before Christians and Jews will suffer attacks because of their beliefs. Remember what happened in World War II in Germany. Christians sat by while Jews were being persecuted. The next time, Christians will also be targeted. In fact, the persecution of Christians has already started. I hope that each of you will take action and get involved locally and nationally in issues that impact us all. Have a great day.